Hi, my name is Moshe Kindler, and I'm the publisher of The Jewish Link,
Hi, this is Elizabeth Kratz. I'm editor of The Jewish Link.
and you're on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting Podcast. All right, welcome to the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting Podcast. I am here with a good friend, a former neighbor who moved out of the Teaneck community and lives in another undescribed location in northern New Jersey, and that is Maury Litwack. Maury's a great friend and just someone who is a very special person, a leader in the community, and welcome, Maury.
I'm really happy to be here. They gave me hot cocoa. I'm sitting here on a Thursday morning. I'm just really enjoying it at the international headquarters of Jewish Link. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm assuming this means that the Jewish Link publication will not arrive on my driveway, but will now be delivered right to my, Shabbos morning. I will get it basically when I have my coffee. So that's what I assume. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I assume that it's an immediate. I'm upgraded to VIP link status.
That is, you definitely are, but more importantly, I know I haven't done this on any of the podcasts. How is the home delivery doing?
The home delivery is great. I'm very happy with the home delivery. It's one of those things where we all read the Jewish Link, and I hear it from my people fight over who's going to get to open the Jewish Link, and so my wife, my kids, etc. So it's a combination of it's one of those papers where you hear what's going on in the news, you see what's going on in your community, and then sometimes you see one of your friends or neighbors or one of your kids in the paper. So it's really exciting because I'm in the media a lot, and it's one of those things where my kids are often like, "I'm in the paper, and you're not in the paper this week." So it's a Jewish Link gives that. It's really just like the whole community. I don't know how you know what's going on weekly in the community if you don't read the Jewish Link.
Love it. Okay, didn't need the commercial, but I really appreciate it, and it's definitely. That's what we're trying to do.
If you just served me coffee, there's no way I would have said that. It was the hot cocoa talking.
Okay, everyone hear that? Serve Maury Litwack hot cocoa, mint hot cocoa, and he's good to go.
Good to go, yeah.
Okay, Maury, I'll tell you something. So I've known you probably for about a decade or so, maybe even more. I always found your background interesting. You are not your typical Orthodox leader. Your background's different. You have a government experience. Give me the Maury Litwack, I guess 2, 3, 4 minute story quickly, and for anyone listening, because I think your background is just unique.
Well, so I grew up in Cleveland, and I went to yeshiva in Maryland, and I ended up going to college at the University of Maryland. So go Terps! As of now, we're still in it to win it in March Madness. I think that I came to senior year. I was getting a degree in like public relations and that sort of communication field. In senior year, I remember being in class and everyone around me was studying for the LSAT. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, we have to figure out what we're doing next year. And I said, I got to study for the LSATs also. So I said, okay, maybe I'll be a lawyer. Like, I never thought that far in terms of it. And I started studying for the LSAT, and I was very diligent, and I studied and got books and everything. And I went to the LSAT, and I scored a 151, which apparently is not good enough to get into law school. So I got rejected from many, many great law schools. And at that point, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had been doing some interning that year at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I was an intern in there in doing basically almost like data processing on the IT side, just a job. And probably about 20 to 30 feet away from me, one day I was doing my very tedious, very boring work, and I heard like whooping and hollering, and people were opening champagne. And I said, what is going on over there? And they said, you should ignore them. Those are the lobbyists. And I said, the lobbyists? That looks like a lot more fun than what I'm doing over here. And I got another internship really with a lobbying firm. And when I graduated from college, my site was on politics and how do I engage in politics. And they told me at the time, they said, look, you can stay at this lobbying firm and make money. But at the end of the day, if you really want to be in politics, you have to actually have political experience. And so I went to work on Capitol Hill. And I went to work for two different members of Congress, both Mormon, because if you keep Shabbos, you got to have an elected official who respects that. And most elected officials do not respect at the time, they didn't respect that flexibility I needed. But the Mormon members of Congress definitely did. So I worked for one from Utah, one from Northern California. Did all kinds of different policy and public affairs work. Left that to become the in-house lobbyist for Miami-Dade County, to be their DC lobbyist representing Miami-Dade County, which is the 6th largest county in the country. doing everything from Miami International Airport work to the Port of Miami to all Miami Transit, all kinds of interesting things. My background, really domestic policy for the most part. And then I got an offer at the OU. And when I was at the OU, there was an opportunity to start working on state and local government affairs. And I started working on it, and something drew me to an unbelievable issue in particular, which was the issue of Jewish education and funding for our kids. And most people don't know this, but most of local and state work, 92% of education funding in America comes from local and state government. So I started working on that, and that drove the creation of an organization called Teach, which people now know in New Jersey, it's Teach NJ. In New York, it's Teach NYS. In Florida, Teach Maryland, Teach California, and on and on. And we're very, very proud of the fact that organization has successfully lobbied for hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion in funding and services and all these things we take for granted, from security guards in front of our schools and schools to security in some of our camps, to funding for STEM education, to this big news that everyone heard about in Florida that's happening this week. So we're really proud of that. So I really went from sort of full circle from watching that whooping and hollering and that champagne popping to doing some of my own champagne popping, and realizing that I could change the world and really help the community by being an influential voice on an advocacy in that front. And I'm very proud that platform has given me the opportunity to not just do that work, but I'm now the managing director of public affairs at the Orthodox Union, which includes oversight of the fundraising work, of the marketing communication work, and also of the politics, all the public-facing aspects of the OU.
All right, so just taking a step back, when you heard those lobbyists living it up, years ago, and then you went into politics, did you have? I'm very into, as the publisher of the Jewish Link, into what I call l'shem shamayim. Did you have like higher aspirations for the Jewish community? Did you ultimately think that you'd be taking some of that? Did you go into politics with the sense of maybe serving the Jewish people, Klal Yisrael?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I thought I'd make a ton of money. I thought I'd make a ton of money. If that intern in there knew what I was doing now, I think he'd be very disappointed. That was not the goal. Was not to work. My father has worked in Klal, worked for his life. I know the difficulties of working in the community and the ups and downs of it. I would never have. No, I mean that wasn't the goal at all. The goal was shalol lishma. So I got to the lishma, but the goal was shalol lishma, which is my intention. Was I thought I was going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, remind me, what was your dad? I forget what.
So my dad was he worked in the Federation. He's worked in on behalf of yeshivas. He worked on behalf of nonprofits. So he's done everything from running development to being executive director at a whole host of places for decades. So I grew up with it's probably, I guess, is in my blood in the sense that I grew up with someone who did that.
Okay, so by the way, I actually forgot that, and I think that's definitely, that has more of an impact on you than you realize. I believe. Yeah. I could be wrong. That's for sure.
But it's even more because people who have been in Klal or have their parents and others are always just amazed that someone else does it, because there's ups and downs to it. There really is. It's not easy to work in the communal life. I think a lot of people say, "Wow, you have such good schluss that you're working in community life," but a lot of times, almost nobody says, "Wow, this must be so much fun to take." Difficult problems and try to resolve them and do that, because it's not easy. It's not easy. The community has a lot of challenges and there's a lot of issues and things like that, and we want to work on those and do those. But many times in the Jewish communal work, you have limited resources to do so. You have limited volunteer work. You have limited funding. So it's not easy. It's not the same as in the business world where you sell X number of product and get Y return. In the community work, you're a lot of the times dealing in abstracts.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. For a lot of people, I feel like it's you mentioned your dad, your father. A lot of people, I feel like it's one teacher, one rebbe. Someone had an influence on you, meaning someone pushed you. But it could even be like a teacher thinking, somewhere you saw the marriage of politics and nonprofit and fundraising, and then you saw it somewhere. I don't know if it's a rebbe. I don't know if it's the teacher. I don't know if it's an experience, but someone in your 20s or wherever or younger got you going. So
I think one of the people I've spoken about this previously, which is one of the people when I was living in Silver Spring, Maryland. One of the people who was very influential to me was Rabbi Einemer Zassal, who was the Rav of the shul. He also created the yeshiva that I went to, and I just was so impressed by the fact that this is someone who came out of Yeshiva and Telz, also Cleveland Connection, and just started something, was a builder. And just to see where the community was and just imagine him building it from scratch I just was very impressed. I'm always impressed by builders, and that was something I think that when I was first starting claw work, I was just so impressed by that. And when I spoke to him about early work I was doing really as a volunteer in the community, he was so supportive of it, just trying one thing, doing your one thing, and going through it. So I would say that's probably the person who had a big impact on me in terms of that as a Rebbe and also as my Rav, and also just that builder piece. So like I don't think people appreciate enough. And there's others in the community who I've developed relationships with who I'm also just massively impressed by their builder pieces. So for example, Rabbi Bender and Darkly Torah, just incredible what he built. I have a relationship with Rabbi Lookstein, who's in his 90s now, who, again, just incredible what he built on the east side. And it's just, you have all kinds of different individuals throughout the community that have just built incredible things. And even just look at Teaneck, some of the people who've just built things from scratch from 40, 50 years ago. It's just wild.
Yeah. By the way, I look at you as a builder also. You've built your own. I still remember when Teach Coalition, when Teach was just starting, I think probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were just trying to do some grassroots lobbying efforts with, if I remember, it was always, at the beginning, it was about lobbying with churches and Muslim and, interfaith groups, just trying to get New York State Assembly to pay attention to our issues. So my memory could be wrong, though.
No, it's funny because I think the reason why I think Moshe and I have a good relationship also is I think we started, the Jewish Link now is 10 years old? Is 10 years old? I saw the anniversary, and I thought for a second it said 25th anniversary, and then I said to myself, Moshe looks great. And then I realized I think it's 10 years, so it's 10-year anniversary. And I started this effort really in earnest probably about 10 years ago in 11, 12, and I remember that we were both sort of just scratching and clawing to make something happen. And I remember when the Jewish Link came out, and two things happened. Is I remember that everyone wanted to do the Jewish Link around the country, and so you feel that like a chrayas, and I think your thing is that those unique areas where klal responsibility meets business, which is a lot of people say, well, it's a business enterprise. It's like, no, it's not. Restaurants in the Jewish community, the Jewish newspapers, others, there's an achrayas and responsibility to the community. So I remember when you were first starting and doing that, it was around the same time as I was doing it, and I remember getting calls. I was living in Maryland at the time, and I remember getting calls where people were like, that'll never be successful, that'll never take off, like, I don't know what he's doing. And I remember speaking to people in Jersey where they say, that won't work. And you remember some of this.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing when it came to Teach. Like, people repeatedly said to me, like, schools did, community members, others, Rabbanim, others say, this is never going to work. And I gotta say that I'm sure you appreciate this also, is just, it feels great to win. It feels great to prove that the skeptics wrong on those things, etc. But boy, oh boy, can you not lose that drive of that next thing, that next big idea, and next where you're going. And complacency is just the worst. And I do believe that when people look at our work or they look at your work, there is sort of a tendency to say, okay, they're the establishment now. But 10 years ago or 12 years ago, a lot of it's just clawing and grabbing and trying to do something.
Yeah, it's fun. I didn't realize that we started at the same time. By the way, people didn't think they weren't skeptical. They thought I was outright mashugano. Okay,
yeah.
And the truth is, something? They thought the same thing about you. I'm actually going to place myself in that camp. I thought what you were doing, 10, 11 years ago, I didn't think you had a chance in hell of success. And I'm really happy to see where you guys. I love every email you send. But speaking of emails that you send, okay, you've become kind of a weekly columnist. I know you're also in, that we don't really mention on the air. I know that you're in Mishpacha as well. I love your columns, by the way. One of the things I find funny is when you write about fundraising.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
So you wrote a column recently about fundraising block. Which I'm going to tell you, I actually disagreed with, because there's no such thing as fundraising block for fundraisers. If a fundraiser can't fundraise or is not doing his job, meaning that what my point is that there's no for a fundraiser, there's always something to do. Meaning, there's always if you're not doing anything, that means you're not doing your job. So, but I liked your actually. Tell the audience what those recommendations were for fundraising.
Look, I do agree that as a fundraiser, there's always something to do. But what I think it's maybe the title should have been different, which is maybe it's fundraiser pause, or maybe it's fundraiser delay, or maybe it's fundraiser prognosticate. But I think similar to other things in life, there's a tendency to be overwhelmed by the moment. And what I was trying to advise people to do was to really just do three things, which is identify who it is you're trying to help, and remember that, which comes from from a book called When, which is just this idea of like stopping and saying, who am I trying to help? So if you're the Jewish Link and you're putting out a very busy Pesach edition and you're overwhelmed, you say, well, who's going to be reading this over Pesach? What am I trying to help? And that's very helpful. Number two is speaking to a mentor or a friend and sort of identifying for a mentor and friend, asking sort of for feedback and guidance on that. And I'm trying to think of what the third one was. What was the third one?
Take a walk.
Third was take a walk. Yeah, sort of just do a process of a sort of reset, if you will, reset. And what I talked about in that column was just the fact that people always think, again, similar to I think anything, which is Martin Luther King is known as one of the biggest nonprofit visionaries in history. And you read his autobiographies, and it's so many times, one of my favorite stories is someone saying, I want to give money to you, and he doesn't have a nonprofit set up. And then him sitting there saying, should we charge $25 for the dinner or $50 for the dinner? And I just love those stories and sort of reminding people that wherever you are, you're whatever there's this perception out there that like that person just was born into success. That person was born into a great gig. That person was born, and it's just not like that.
Yeah, 100%. The truth is, actually, one of the things that's funny is every time I talk to you, it's basically a big part of your job is fundraising. Like it's
right.
By the way, no one graduates college thinking they want to be a fundraiser. People fall into it. You know, I'm now not in fundraising. You're in fundraising. I actually look at you as one of the leading fundraisers of our current day. You know, just tell us a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how much you're spending time on fundraising, nationally and locally. I know you're helping all the local teachers as well.
Right. So I probably spend about 50% of my time on fundraising, the other 50% of my time on political work and political advocacy. I like fundraising. To me, fundraising is very similar to lobbying. It's another form of sales.
Interesting.
The reason why I like fundraising and I think I'm good at it and I thrive at it is I just really believe that fundraising is completely about relationships. And I just believe that one of the things I teach and I talk about all the time is I found sort of a reset on the fundraising side and realizing that when you're going after a cause or you're trying to help a cause or anything, it's you want to have an honest and real exchange with people in terms of values. And the thing that I talk about is like if I were to ask Moshe right now for let's do something that we both care about. So like if I were to ask what's this duck you care about? What duck are we raising for today? What do we got? Give me something.
Well, you talk about the organization I founded, the Bayit Association,
yes.
Housing for Special Needs Adults, Jewish special needs adults in our community.
Right. So the Bayit, right? So it's the, right? We got a the. So the Bayit is, I think, a very important cause. And if I were to go up to somebody and I would just say to them, thanks for meeting with me, I need $1,000 for the Bayit. The person's reaction to that whole thing is one of two things. Either they say, maybe a minority of them say, okay, here's $1,000. Or the more likely reaction is, I don't have a relationship with you. I don't know the organization. I don't have a relationship with you. I don't know what the cause is. I'm not sure if it's in my cause range. And people get turned off from that. And they give out 180 or 360. Then there seems to be almost like a plague in the community of fundraisers repeatedly saying, okay, I asked for 1,000, I made 180. I'll just keep bothering Moshe every year for the 180 until he gives me that. Maybe he gives me 72. It's sort of like this volume idea. And if you look at professional fundraising training and you look at that in any sales, it doesn't work like that. What happens is that similar to like people who want ads in the Jewish Link, there's an idea that this is good for both parties. The ad will give me exposure within the Jewish Link and sales, and the Jewish Link makes sales off of it, and it's the right value in ad. But if the Jewish Link just starts calling advertisers and cold calling advertisers, it's like what? So maybe you get a $100 ad or $50 ad, but it's not. It's a broken relationship. I think so with fundraising as well. I just think so much of it is about understanding what is the value system of the person you're asking for, and does it fit into what you're doing. So one of my first questions that I teach and train always is, Moshe, what are the top 3 causes that you're interested in? And you'd find out from that the Bayit might fit into one of those top 3 causes. And then when you go from there, then you can have a real exchange of information. But there's many times where someone says, it's not in my top 3 causes, and then you might have to stop fundraising or not ask them or continue. And maybe you could say, well, who is it in their top 3 causes that we could go ask? So the meaning isn't purposeless, but okay, you move on to somebody else. Similarly, there's many people who call me up and say, I thought I was interested in this. I don't care about this or others. And I'm many times offered to say, you don't have to continue giving to it. Because, again, it's that exchange. And I think the reason why I've developed a reputation as a good fundraiser is that lay leaders know that that's how I work. And so I've turned, like I went to someone's office, they offered me a substantial amount of money, but with the caveat that they weren't interested in the project at all, and I turned them down. Because I just fundamentally believe that that's what this is about.
Yeah. That person who turned you down, did you get him to become a donor after?
Eventually he became a donor to other things, but that project he wasn't interested in. But from a respect and reputation perspective, we have a real relationship now because that's it. Donors know that they can have that real relationship with me. And I think what's lost in the fundraising world, in Jewish and from nonprofits in particular, is just that once a year rinse, wash, repeat. Like I hit the same person up for money every year, once a wash, repeat. They have no idea what you're doing over the course of the year. They don't feel involved in it. They don't feel vested in it. People give to top three causes because they feel with their mind and their heart that they're doing that's making a very powerful impact, and they give more to it because they feel that they're part of that impact. And nonprofits just many times do a poor job. They ask for money just at the dinner. They ask for money just at that one-time fundraising, and then they're surprised when people go down, lower their money, or they don't increase it.
Yeah, no, 100%. But those are good words, and I think, by the way, you're running Teach that way. I mean, I think just saying as someone who's on the Teach list, and I feel like you're doing a good job. Though I'm not the average person, you're doing a good job. Just kind of keeping your donors, your people, your activists. You said you started off actually before we went on camera. Yeah. You actually said you have over 10,000 activists.
Yeah,
in the
we have an incredible number of advocates who are basically developing relationships with politicians. They're heading to places like Albany and Trenton, and it's incredible. I mean, like we really have a movement of people who are involved in this at this point because, look, Jewish education is the most important issue in the community. There was a study by the Nishma Research Profile which said that tuition crisis is the number one issue. 88% polled that tuition crisis is the number one issue across all hashkafic areas. So, I mean, I don't think we should be surprised. I mean, it has a direct, immediate impact on people's pocketbooks and their children and grandchildren.
Yeah. Okay, so the big news of the day for us is actually Florida. Okay, and just so you know, some of your Teach staff has been like saying, Moshe, you gotta write about Florida. You gotta write about Florida. And I said, well, we don't really cover Florida yet. I do deliver, by the way. Jewish Link is delivered to South Florida weekly. I don't know if you're aware of that, Maury. Yes. Okay. I just made a commitment now to do it between Rosh Hashanah and Pesach weekly, year round, about 7 months a year.
I think you're gonna have a problem though when you do I've seen those issues where you do like the snowstorms and you do the snow and things like that, and then you have that on the beach. I think you're going to create a lot of conflict between the communities. So I think you got to think through the exact what your seasons you're covering.
So hold on a second. So I actually got into a bit of a fight with one of your people. Not a bad fight. And I said, Florida's not really in our coverage area. Right. We're just not covering Florida. And they said, no, Moshe, this is actually relevant to you. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about why she was right. Okay. And I know that the number that's being bandied around is 8,500 per student for Florida. So tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to hear about New Jersey also.
Right. So I There's a doctor in Florida. His name is Alan, and he about 13 years ago was a volunteer at Torres Emes, which is one of the big schools there, and he was looking on his on the sheet of the budgets and everything else, and he saw this line pop up, and he asked the school, "What is this line?" They said, "Well, it's a new scholarship program, a tax credit scholarship program." And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was under $50,000 or something. And he said, "This is incredible." He said, "Can we honor them at the dinner?" And they said, "What do you mean we can honor dinner? There's an organization, a scholarship granting organization." So he did some research, and he found out that the state of Florida had passed a law which provided tax credit scholarships to non-public schools. And the way the program works, very simple, was that if you were Florida Citrus, you could make a $10 million donation to the Yeshiva and Catholic Scholarship Fund. And then the Yeshiva and Catholic Scholarship Fund would give upwards of $8,500 to anyone making below, let's say, $150,000, somewhere in that range. And they would get that scholarship. And at the end of the year, Florida Citrus would be able to write off their taxes $10 million. Not a deduction, literally a credit. So if they owed the state of Florida $20 million, now they only owe $10 million. Win-win for everybody. So Dr. Jacob looked at this.
Not so much the state, though. The state's it's out a little money.
Well, not necessarily. We're going to talk about that in a second. So Dr. Jacob looked at this program and started to advocate and find out what is going on. He traveled to Tallahassee, found out which legislators were supportive of it or not. He created something called the Jewish Leadership Coalition, which was a real coalition of all the different Jewish parties involved. And then we met up, and Dr. Jacob formed Teach Florida with us. And he's been the chairman ever since, and that's probably like 2013, 2014. And we've watched, we brought in we brought lobbyists in, political strategists. We turned people out to vote. We engaged the community in an unbelievable way. We built a serious advocacy organization in Florida, and year after year we watched those programs grow. But we also watched our political clout and muscle grow as well. And this year we saw an opportunity to advocate for something unbelievable, which was the idea that perhaps we could get a universal program. Regardless of income, everyone would be eligible for it. And Baruch Hashem, this week, Governor DeSantis signed into law an $8,000 per child scholarship program, which people will have in accounts, and it can be used for tutoring. It can be used for literally tuition. It can be used for all kinds of things. But I was literally in Florida for most of this week, not just celebrating, popping those champagne bottles like I was in the insurance company, but also talking to parents who just couldn't get over the fact that they were getting $8,000 a kid, regardless of their income.
Anyone who's not sending their kid to a Florida public school now has $8,000 to do tutoring, to do whatever they want.
They can use it for tuition, a lot of different things.
Wow!
And so it's a remarkable thing. And it's, I think, the biggest news we've ever done, because we've gotten some of these programs in other states. We've passed, but Florida is the third or fourth largest yeshiva day school population in the country. Florida is the first state with a very sustainable, serious institution. And I'm saying that, I respect to the out-of-towners, but I'm saying it as an out-of-towner who grew up with like very few kosher restaurants. And so Florida has a lot of schools. Florida has a real system. So it's a big deal. Like, I think I wrote an article last week for the New York Sun where I said that, I didn't write an article. I was quoted in the New York Sun where I said, I thought people in New York and New Jersey are going to move because of it, which I do believe they are going to move because of it. But I think that it's the breaking news for the New Jersey constituency and for the Jewish Link constituency in particular is we've already been Teach NJ has already been lending its support to a effort statewide to go after tax credits like that original program that Dr. Jacob looked at. And there's an effort statewide, which there's support for it in Passaic, there's support for it in Metro West, there's support for it in Clifton, in Lakewood, there's support for it in Englewood, in Teaneck, and Fair Lawn. There's community leadership across the board who have all gathered together to say we want to go after this program in New Jersey. And the idea behind it is to have a multi-year plan to go after it. The idea behind it is to really increase our voter turnout on it, because that's one of the most important things you can do. The idea behind it is increase our relationships with our elected officials. And the idea behind it also is to increase our unity as a community, not just within the Jewish community, but within that larger interfaith community as well. So I don't think we've announced it anywhere, but that is the goal intent, and we've been working on. So when parents in New Jersey heard about it and they say, why not New Jersey? I say, well, good news. We're already working on an initial sort of pilot form of that. Now, when parents say to me, well, it will be universal, I don't see that being the initial programs. I think there will be an income cap on it. But just imagine a situation where parents could be getting $8,000 to $10,000 per kid. Even if it's an income cap to a certain amount, you're seeing unbelievable drive. Before this program, just under that existing scholarship tax credit program, we had schools who were announcing publicly that they had 3 to 5 kids on scholarship. So just imagine that in this community here would be an unbelievable game changer for that.
Right, and it's funny because I remember talking about this. Our community, almost everyone can afford to pay something.
Right.
Most people are working. There really are, from what I know of the community, most people are able to pay, definitely a few thousand per kid for tuition for the vast majority. Okay, 8,000 would be huge, or any number would be huge. Actually, I just like the way that you're approaching, which is not just about lobbying for more direct aid. That's not. And almost what you're saying is that's not going to really work per se. You have to do it a little bit sophisticated.
Yeah, you have to do things. Dr. Jacob said that it's the art of the incremental. It's the art of incremental. Now, we believe that, we have a 4 to 5 year plan to get it done. Maybe we're in year 1 right now. Dr. Jacob, if anybody told you that in 12 years we could get $8,000 per kid here, I think everybody would roll up their sleeves and go do it. I'm not saying we have a 12-year plan, but I do think that there is a tendency in the community to want things like that. And we've had a very difficult time explaining to community members that if you want to go after these big wins and do this, it is the art of the incremental. It requires a lot of work, and it requires us a political sophistication, which our community does lack. Our community, the best part of this is the way I always describe this for years and years is I ask people in a room to raise their hands and tell me how many of their assembly members they know, how many of their state senators they know, how many of their city council members they know, how many of their town council, whatever it is. By the time I'm done, nobody has raised their hand. And then I say to them, what would you do if I were to tell you that your local and state elected officials are anti-Israel? And they would lose their minds. I say, but how do you know if they are or not? Now, the reason why I use that analogy is because being anti-Israel in our community is probably a good way to not get elected, but also a good way to sort of change the community's perspective and get people out to vote, et cetera. So I say, but do you know that a lot of the local and state elected officials, they don't support funding for our schools, or a lot of them are literally publicly against it. And so, if you look at it like that and think about it like that, you realize we just have a tremendous amount of work to do. And so I like to use that because it's sort of a wake-up call to community members of how to think about it.
I like that. That's for sure. By the way, also, it wasn't just Florida. Pennsylvania, I think, also about a year or two as well. You want to talk about?
Yeah, Pennsylvania has had an existing program there, which has been very beneficial as well. Look, I think that the fact that you have in neighboring Pennsylvania a program like this, I do believe that one of our pitches to New Jersey is going to be, you don't want to lose kids to Florida, you don't want to lose them to Pennsylvania. When Hollywood receives tax credits to film here, it's because the state is arguing that you want to incentivize those job producers. You want to incentivize those taxes and the revenue. It's the same thing with us. When you lose families to Florida and other places, you're losing tax revenue. And Florida has a surplus. And there's a reason why Florida has a surplus, because they're trying to attract not just businesses, but they're also trying to attract our families. So that's when you look at that spend, Florida is doing, if Microsoft were to drop into Teaneck tomorrow and were to say, we are going to create a headquarters in Teaneck with 10,000 jobs, elected officials would jump over themselves to try to figure out how do you get them to stay here, tax breaks, tax incentives. What's the difference between that and losing 10,000 Jewish or Catholic or Islamic kids? What is the difference? And that's what the argument we have to make to elected officials.
Okay, I was actually going to get to that point. Some of these tax credit programs will impact the state budget, so the state bottom line. How do you answer some of those?
That's what I answered it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, it's. So I'll tell you something. So I rarely ever promise. One of the ironclad rules about the Jewish Link is we never guarantee front page. Okay, but I'm promising you now that with every one of your successes, I'm promising you and the Teach team that we will look forward to putting some of your successes on the front page. Let's just say that.
Wow, I like it. I really thought we were going in a direction where you were going to deliver me the Jewish Link on Shabbos. I thought for 1 second that's where he was going to go. He was going to walk.
No.
I live in Englewood. I thought he was going to walk to Englewood. It's not bad. It's not as good as that, but I hope to see you on Shabbos sometime also.
All I can say is some of the people in Englewood have these really long driveways, and they tell me that if they don't pick it up before Shabbos, it's such a long walk to the end of their driveway, and I always get upset when I hear that.
By the way, there's been times where I haven't read it on Shabbos, and I want to read it on the way to shul, and I see it at the end of a long driveway, and I think about the ethics of whether I can pick it up or not. Because if you see that they didn't read it at the end, I think we have to ask a child. You got to bring a rug on.
No, so I've already asked that child, and here's the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, the answer is if someone has not taken the paper by Shabbos, okay, that paper is hefker. Okay, it's free and clear. You're allowed to take it. All right, meaning that person has been miyayish, even though it's on their property. That person has clearly no interest in taking it in if it's Shabbos. Okay,
right.
So therefore it's free and clear. You can take it in. Now
that's how I feel about the suburbanite. People are willing. People can take the suburbanite anytime they want from my driveway. Right. So that's right. Do not touch my Jewish Link, but people can take the suburbanite anytime you want. Yeah, I like it.
Just to let you know, by the way, I think I said this before, but there are some families, by the way, that we do deliver 2 papers a week for shalom bias issues. Meaning, because there are fights within families. There's about 25 families. You didn't know about this special unique VIP program. I am announcing it on the air. So if anyone contacts me at editor,
I think we should raise some money for therapists for these families. I think that is that.
What do you mean? The 2 papers keep them sane. They keep them.
I guess. Wow, that is service.
So we definitely. I don't do it too often, but I'm putting it on this show, letting people know if they want to.
You can split the paper up. Like you read different parts of it. It comes out. There's there's spreads and things like that.
It's actually funny, by the way. It's, mentioned talking about splitting the paper up. The paper's been, thank God, been big. And then we'll get back to you. We are thinking about splitting up into sections, like the Wall Street Journal and the Times. Thank God. So that's
maybe that's how the Wall Street Journal and Times came the way they did, is because people just kept calling and saying our spouses are fighting over the paper. We need special inserts and things like that. Certainly, the comics page had to be that. Like, get my kids away from me. Give them like a comics page.
Yeah, you're funny. You're also forgetting that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, these papers were much, much bigger.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I think I've told you this in the past, but we actually know about when the decline of the secular print paper has happened. It's actually, we know the exact date in history when newsprint actually became to be less relevant.
When?
Okay, it's Black Monday, October 7, 1987. Okay, the Sunday Times was 1,400 pages. People remember how thick the Sunday New York Times was? Okay, it was over 1,400 pages. It has never been that way since. It's basically been on a downhill ever since, and I don't even think it's even 150, 200 pages today. Honestly, if you ever look at your New York Times on Sunday.
I don't get a subscription to the New York Times.
You got to read that. Don't you feel like you have to read something?
I read it sometimes, but I'm not a New York Times subscriber.
Okay.
I gotta prioritize Jewish Link. I gotta make sure to consume that.
One of our goals is to make the Jewish Link so that it takes a lot of people a lot of time to read it. By the way, I don't expect you to read every article. By the way, you have any favorite pieces of it, or are you just a news and letters guy? I think that
I'll tell you. So the thing that I read very religiously is Nina Glick. My wife and I always think her stuff is very. I think it's always that line of like getting people to think about stuff, and also she takes positions, and so I like that. I like someone who takes positions, and I think it's one of those things where I'm sure you get a lot of mail and letters response to it because she takes positions, and I think in a column like that, and I said to Moshe previously that I think there should be an Ask Nina column where people get to ask her questions and do that, but I said it off the air, and I'm saying on the air, so I really like that. And the other thing I like is I love the section, obviously going through with my kids and seeing who in the paper they know. And then I thought the comic section was really cool. And that new comic, I thought that was really cool. Just as someone who grew up reading the comics, and I thought the artwork was great and the design was great. And I obviously read your editorials also. I do that as well. But I probably, if I'm being honest, I probably read the comics before I read the editorial. Okay. So like I probably read I religiously read Nina's column, and then everything else afterwards. So anyway, if Nina's listening, we need an Ask Nina column. I think we need that as well.
I think we'll have to tell Nina about that. Yeah. That's by the way, she'd love to hear it. But she'd love that. She's.
I think we should. I think she's good. I just think that there's too much like sort of safe, blasé, vanilla going on in the world, and there's a lot of problems, a lot of issues. So take positions, like talk about stuff, discuss stuff, and I think that's great. I think people who do that. I think that's also why I like the editorials. Is I also know Moshe knows that I love it when he gets a lot of calls and a lot of things about that, and I've called him and be like, oh, probably heard from a lot of people on that. I think that's great. I think that Jewish Link is creating that discussion point that otherwise where are you going to hear that from? It just you're not going to hear that as much from other places. So I think it's great that the Jewish Link can be that forum. I also think it's great. There's many times the Jewish Link is a forum for someone writing something controversial or a letter, an opinion. And there's been people who've said to me, the Jewish Link shouldn't publish that. I'm like, that's complete nonsense. The Jewish Link 100% should publish that because the Jewish Link should be a forum for discussion and ideas and things like that. And I'll never forget one of the biggest things that the Jewish Link tackled when we first moved here was the high school issue of not enough kids getting into high school. And I still remember people quoting and saying, well, there's a resolution and what did this happen? And I know that I just remember reading that and saying, that's great. Like, I don't know who else would take on that issue and be that platform to do that.
No, thank you. The answer is we definitely actually one of the things I failed as a publisher is we don't have enough of those kind of issues, what I call larger community klal issues. I always wanted, I always thought I always harken back to the papers from 200-300 years ago, Yiddish papers where you'd have the Zionists and the Mizrachim and the Agudis and the Bundis all kind of beating each other up, or within the pages of the paper, one side versus the other. I always wanted more counterpoints. I really wanted the issues of the day to be in our paper. I actually sometimes one of my regrets actually, Maury, is that we don't get enough of some of that really important back and forth in the community. It's hard.
I think it's hard to do it Baruch Hashem, our community doesn't have a whole host of things that you have to do that with. But I think it's difficult because I do think many times there's Rabbanim taking a position in your paper and using it as a platform. I just think people don't want to create conflict and take sort of the other the position. But I do think there's probably a way for us to do that in a respectful way, and the Jewish Link could cultivate that. But I think the community is seeking, many times the community is seeking those discussions at the Shabbos table, and they're having those discussions and debate. And I think if that's what's happening at your Shabbos table, I don't see why we can't do that in bigger public forums if people are respectful and nice. I think what creates that danger and problem is that you can keep it within the confines of the paper, and then on social media, people just go completely wild in terms of the opinions and comments and things like that. I'm on Twitter, and then I have a policy that I try as hard as I can not to respond to anybody who's anonymous on Twitter or on social media in general, because it's like, well, if you didn't have the guts to put your name out there, why would I put my name on there? So I do think there's probably a way to do it. It's just social media creates that environment where one position can go.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely complicated for sure. By the way, so you're not spending your time with Teach anymore. So just let's kind of end a little bit. Your vision's bigger now. You're now representing the Orthodox Union. So tell me a little about, because we've been talking mostly about Teach. Tell me about like the Orthodox Union. Maybe we'll close on that stuff as well.
So I think that when you think about the Orthodox Union, one of the challenges that I think we have as an organization is there's a lack of understanding over the impact that the Orthodox Union makes on people's day-to-day lives in the Frum community. The Orthodox Union is the largest Orthodox umbrella organization in the world. It is massive. And I think, for example, people don't even, let's say what the OU is most well known for, which is kashrus. And I don't think people appreciate what goes into ingredients and ingredient details and everything else like that, and being in those foreign countries, checking ingredients and doing all those types of things. OU is a massive kashrus organization. It helps make all those things kosher. A leader in the field, a visionary in so many ways, Rabbi Ganak, who's local to North Jersey. I think that's a big deal, and I think people just don't appreciate when they go in the grocery aisle how many of those things were kosher. I mean, you and I grew up in a world where Oreos and M&Ms weren't kosher, and so it's a big deal. That's my moment where I'm explaining that Moshe and I are older than some of the demographic listeners. So just for those listening, I mean, that was my way of doing that. Because if you said to yourself, well, they've always been kosher for me, you're younger than Moshe and I.
That's right.
So the thing is that that's one. The other piece of it is that when you just look around, when people send their kids to college campus, we have the JLIC program. And so whether you're in University of Maryland, or you're in Brooklyn College, or all these other places that people go, Harvard, all kinds of different places, there's a JLIC campus couple to help learn with the kids, to help create an Orthodox Frum lifestyle. So that's the OU. The OU is obviously Teach, which is helping our whole yeshiva day school system. The OU is NCSY, which is just massive, which is doing everything. I mean, now I'll just give a plug for. I don't know if anybody doesn't know. There's somebody who goes to NCSY summer. Like every one of us in the community has someone who knows going to NCSY summer. OU has Yachad, and Yachad does unbelievable things, and for inclusion of community members. Again, I don't know if there's anybody who isn't related to somebody who has a special need. And so Yachad is helping those community members from childhood to adult and doing incredible things for them. We have our Torah programs. A lot of people don't know that all Daf, all Parsha, these learning apps, which allow people to learn, is because of the OU. We have communal growth programs. We have initiatives where we teach people about personal finances, and helping people to learn about the personal finances and set budgets and create budgets. We have our women's initiative, which is about women learning, and is run by the incredible Dr. Rebbetzin Adina Schmidman. We have it's a platform for so many other things in the community. We have I'm just trying to go through all of them. There's so many of these things. We have OU Israel. If you go to Israel, and you can see the incredible work of OU Israel under Rabbi Berman. I'm trying to think if I missed anybody. There's just so many things. The fact that I, as someone who works there, can't remember each and every thing. We have OU Press and OU Publishing, where a lot of incredible books come out that you may not be aware of it.
Oh, actually, I'm aware of most of them.
Yeah, you're aware of most of them.
The Jewish Link, let's just say OU Press has a direct line to us.
Yes, OU Jewish Action, which is the magazine that we publish quarterly, which is incredible. There's just so many things that the OU is doing and making an impact on. We're involved in Birthright Israel programs, like so many of these different things. But I just think that to summarize it, I think whether it's you're learning on a day-to-day basis, you're you're sending your kids to school and you want them protected and you want a more affordable education, you are looking for your kids going to college, and you're looking for to make sure if they're in one of these universities that they're in the right environment. You have someone with special needs, or you're related to someone with special needs, you care about someone with special needs. So many of these different things that OU is addressing, and there's an OU for you, and we're very proud of it. I mean, I think one of the greatest things that I ever did was joining the OU because of the impact and platform it's given me, not just to teach, but also just make an impact on all these other things in people's lives.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Maury, you're speaking just like a true Jewish leader. I mean, what I've actually seen from you over the last more than 10 years, I guess now. How many years at the OU? 12, 13 years?
Yeah, wow, 14 years?
So I think I probably met you around then. And I just want to say I feel like I've been watching you grow into a real Jewish leader. A national, international Jewish leader. You start off by saying we're the international headquarters of the Jewish Link. We're not international just so fast, but we definitely are looking to see. And I'm looking up to you, even though I'm bigger than you. I've been looking up to you for a while. So I'm just going to say Kane Yerbu, and also if you have any closing thoughts or any final thoughts or anything like that.
I think that I would say to people, I always try to close with the following, which is just what's your sort of imagine point for your life in terms of community and in terms of what you want to see changed. And something small can make an impact on your children and grandchildren, whether or not it's your dedication to your shul, whether or not it's your dedication to your school, whether or not it's all kinds of things. And I think when you look at, this is called the pitch meeting, and what you see pitched within the Jewish Link is all community related. I know that there's also business interests in there and things like that, and that's great. But so much of it is community and community projects and community things that you're doing. And I think
that's supposed to be a secret, by the way, that how much of the paper is nonprofits.
I know.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's a big piece.
But there's also just so many stories that are about community members starting gamachs in their home, community members starting new projects, community members having new ideas. And I do believe that if you're listening to this or you're learning about this for the first time, I do think that everyone should, like my Rebbe taught me, everyone should sort of carve out their own thing that they think with their talents and their skills and make an impact on the world. I mean, I think the Jewish people need you, and you should be sitting in a pitch meeting with Jewish Link saying, "This is my project and why it's really important."
I appreciate that. That's I like that. The Jewish people need you, and we need to be pitched. I like it. That's a great way to end it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news and follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.